Hey, put the pipe down. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding, sweetheart. Good to see you, Denali. While we're waiting for other people to come in, I'm going to do my little blurb. We do have a guest over, and Cowboy's being very vocal. Well, now you're going to be shutting up because you're just going to be that way because he's a cat. Oh, okay, there you go. That's what you get. You get that much. And I got to pay him extra treats for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a big star now. You know, he went viral. He blew up. Mm-hmm. Yep. All he had to do was review a cat toy. Oh, dear. Hey, Linda. Hey, James. Okay, so I'm going to do my blurb. This is, I'm D. Ocean Swagger. This is D. Ocean's Deep Woo. I just came back from a shopping trip, which is why I'm a little out of. Here we do the deepest of woos. I mean, we do every kind of woo. Everything from truth kind of thing to paranormal to, you know, we have gone down some rabbit holes. We, what metaphysical, spiritual, we do all that. And we're mostly experiencers. So if you're an experiencer, you're in the right place. Nobody's going to hurt you here. Have a more tendency to believe you. And I ask you do respect the other people here and my guests, and remember that they're coming from their own experience, and that's all we can really ask people. Hello, Marilena, Linda. Let's see, we got James, Marilena, and Linda, and Denali was first in. Okay, my trustworthy and very punctual mod. Thank you, mods, by the way. You always do such a good job. Okay, so many of if you're not an experiencer, you're certainly welcome to. If you're just asking questions, this is a good place too, because we're not, you know, at all adverse to educating people here. And if you have no idea what we're talking about, but you just want to hang out in the chat room, that's okay too. We don't care. Pretty friendly people here. So as a matter of fact, they're all going to spend first 10 or 15 minutes saying hello to each other like nice people do in a nice chat room. Mm-hmm. Oh, you were lighting the candle. Thank you, Denali. You're so good about doing that. Thank you so much. My mods are the best. They're so sweet. Just on top of things. Okay, we got a special guest, Paul Christian, tonight again. And he knows about a lot of stuff. And, you know, when I told him the subject, and I said, you can jump in if you want. And he said, sure, I got something to say. So I'm there going, woo, Paul's coming in. So, and he's always got good info. So we're very lucky to have Paul tonight. I am negotiating with somebody you probably all know and love, or most of you know and love. Robin McCrae, the Sasquatch Whisperer, is going to come on my show at some point. I'm very excited about that. So we're going to start to have some Sasquatchy stuff on here, some forest people type stuff. And let's see. So now all I got to say is we're just doing tips, tricks, and hacks for the massively multiplayer, total immersion, virtual reality learning game matrix called Life on Planet Earth. And so with that, let's get going. And let me get Paul in here. Now, you know Paul. He has been here before, and he's always interesting. He's a Reiki master and an Amanahune master and several other kinds of master. And I mean, he should have a bunch of certificates behind him, but unfortunately, the colleges don't have the right areas of study yet. We maybe have to build our own college. Okay, Paul,
Hi,
what we're
Ocean.
talking about. Hey, and what
Can
we're
you hear?
talking about tonight is we are going to be talking about what is human herding. I mean, you know how to herd. You've seen goat herds. You've seen cow herds. But how do you herd humans? How do you get them to do what you want? I mean, it's like everybody's got to think of that. This is a how you're going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris. uh, so we're going to start to talk about that. One of the, I mean, there are several things that have all been used very effectively. Besides the military, which is usually a last resort. But we also have something much easier. The media. The media and religion has been traditionally used to herd humans. And but there are ways. Neuro-linguistic program. Yep. Actually, yeah, we're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about all this stuff. We are going to talk a little bit in code to make sure that the algorithms still let us stay here. But, um, for the most part, we're, this is just a game. And this is just my opinion. And this is just anecdotes and stories. So take what you will and leave the rest. And Paul, what you
Yeah.
got for us tonight?
Can you hear me okay?
You sound great to me.
Okay. Okay. Well, when you talked about the
Oh, hi,
media,
Ben.
I came across something really very interesting, and it shouldn't be too radical to read from the congressional record, wouldn't you think? I mean,
I would think that should be allowed.
doesn't that sound
I
pretty
hope so.
patriotic? I mean,
I
even
should.
yeah, to read from
That
the
watch,
congressional
though,
record.
being a patriot can get you in
Yeah,
trouble.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
Yeah,
generally,
they expect you to wear a, hat, the guy with the hair.
yeah,
Anyway,
I'm
yeah.
generally not accused of being a patriot, but
Not often.
well, I wouldn't describe myself as unpatriotic, but
No, no.
my, I mean, to be perfectly honest and just share, my
Right.
first
We do
allegiance,
some tips,
yeah,
tricks, and hacks. The Matrix. Right.
my first allegiance is to the Holy Spirit. That's just my personal space. That's my first allegiance. So,
And this is some of my lovely, if you're wondering, this is some of my lovely ginger lemon limeade. And it's so
ah,
hydrating, cleansing. And if you ever want to know how to make this, I'm probably going to make a video about it, but it's really easy. And I'll tell you all about it if you want the recipe. And it's really good. Okay, go for it, Paul.
okay. Now, I found this information in a book called Brotherhood of Darkness, and it's by Dr. Stanley Monteith, Monteith. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Stanley Monteith. And this was published in, let's see, I think, yeah, copyright is 2000. Okay, but now this quote from the congressional record, it was entered into the congressional record on February 9th, 1917 by Congressman Oscar Callaway. Okay, and here's the direct reading from the congressional record. In March 1915, the J.P. Morgan interests and their subsidiary organizations got together 12 men high up in the newspaper world and employed them to select the most influential newspapers in the United States and sufficient number of them to control generally the policy of the daily press of the United States. These 12 men worked the problem out by selecting 179 newspapers and then began by an elimination process to retain only those necessary for the purpose of controlling the general policy of the daily press throughout the country. They found that it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers. The 25 papers were agreed upon. Emissaries were sent to purchase the policy, national and international, of these papers. An agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was bought to be paid for by month. An editor was furnished for each paper to properly supervise and edit information regarding the questions of preparedness, militarism, financial policies, and other things of national and international nature considered vital to the interests of the purchasers. This contract is in existence at the present time, and it accounts for the news columns of the daily press of the country being filled with all sorts of preparedness arguments. End of quote.
Wow.
So they actually bought control of the 25 top newspapers, and then all the other newspapers generally just follow their stories. You know, like a lot of times our local paper will say this is a column from the New York Times or the Chicago Tribune or something like that, you know. So, I mean, that's just, you know, this is almost like, you know, tame, you know, Bigfoot's tame compared to this stuff. You know what I mean? This is, so basically in our system of government, we have three branches, okay? The judicial, the, oh boy, now I'm blanking now.
Executive, Jason says.
Yeah, the executive, the judicial, and the, whatever, the Congress, you know, can't remember the, you know, the lawmakers, whatever. Okay, so those are the three
lawmakers.
Yeah, I'm kind of blanking on. Anyway,
but you mean the
three branches of government, but all our early founding fathers talked about the fourth estate, like a fourth branch of government, and they were talking about the free press.
Legislative. Ben got it. Legislative.
Yes. Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Yes.
He also asks excellent questions.
Okay.
One of my best question askers.
Oh, good. We love good questions. So basically, that fourth estate, that free press, was considered absolutely vital by our founding fathers. And now we find out that we haven't had that. You know, we haven't had that since 1917. So
yeah.
Anyway.
So we haven't had a free press since 1917. And then very oddly, and actually, I'm sure there is absolutely no connection whatsoever. But, you know, that just kind of reminds me that right after that happened, wasn't there a runaway illness? We're just going to call it a runaway illness.
Yes. 1919. 1919. Yes, there was a big
illness
do.
that everybody, and guess what? They were having to wear things,
And
faces for that. And it was,
yeah, and also that was okay. Part of this control of the media had to do with certain interests wanted us involved in World War I. So they started printing stories of all kinds of atrocities that they just basically made up. They were talking about, I mean, they printed stories of German soldiers cutting off the hands of Belgian boys and raping the women and doing all kinds of atrocities. And it was simply all made up. And so, but it got everybody fired up, so that, you know, the young patriotic men would join up, and it got everybody mad enough that we entered into World War I. So if you're bankrolling both sides and selling both sides weapons, then you're going to make a lot of money no matter who wins. So it's really
absolutely
business. It's so basically, so much of our history has been just totally whitewashed.
Yep.
So,
And hidden in other ways too, not just whitewash, but actually there are agencies that destroy it when they find anything that would give us a clue what was actually happening in our history, in our actual history. They'll
right.
come and destroy it, and that would be the Smithsonian.
Well, even Lewis and Clark, you know, their famous expedition out west. They actually encountered blue-eyed Native Americans.
Yeah.
Okay, now that was a problem because the claims, you know, whether it was the English, French, Spanish, you know, governments, whoever the first explorer was who encountered certain lands, they made claims. You know, I claim this land in the name of my country, whatever. Okay, planted their flag, but that claim, it was necessary for them to be the first. So the fact that there was
you can't have people here and then take it over.
Yeah,
that's not going to look good. If there's civilized people here, then you're stealing. But if they're all just savages, then you're actually, yeah. And I know, and that is why a lot of the cities and stuff were never mentioned.
Yeah,
right.
But the so the fact that Viking explorers were here, you know, 400 years before Columbus would have negated those claims.
Oh, yeah.
So and now I don't remember which one it was. One of them, whether it was Lewis or Clark, I don't remember which one, but one of them was going to talk, and he was murdered. Just, you know, just so he wouldn't talk.
There's all kinds of stories that early explorers talk about cities and talk about even some things we think of as cryptids now. One of them talked extensively about the Dogman tribe, and that were a remote tribe that stayed away from everybody else and minded their own business, but they were friendly. They were so really apparently there were dogmen here. They were related to us, apparently, because they look a lot like us, except more of a dog-like face. And they were taller. They were giants. They were like 7, 8 feet tall or something like that. And they were talked about. They were seen. And the cities, I guess there were bustling cities with a lot of people. But the problem, what got them, and this reminds me of some fiction, and I really think Ray Bradbury was thinking of this when he wrote about Mars, is because there were beautiful, bustling cities, and they died from our diseases that we brought them. Not ours specifically, but they died from diseases brought over by the explorers and stuff.
Right, right.
And it decimated everything. And actually, there's a part in Ray Bradbury's work that talks about that when he's talking about colonizing Mars. That, there could be stuff there and we could be killing it right now. I mean, I can guarantee you right now there is life on the moon because we put it there. And I can guarantee there's life on Mars because we put it there, because our bacteria, I'm sure they don't disinfect everything before it goes out into space. Our bacteria are going to be there. And we don't know what kind of effect that's going to have. But we did it anyway. So there you go. So go ahead. What were you going to say, Paul?
Well, there's another, when you were talking, it reminded me when you said the word exploration. There was a sea captain. He was retired, but he was fascinated with ancient seafaring. So he studied all kinds of ancient vessels. He traveled the entire world to all the museums that had old boats and artifacts from sunken ships. And he put together this fascinating story that in ancient Crete, it was a Bronze Age culture. And they made beautiful bronze artifacts. And they found them all over the world. And so they did a modern assay of the bronze. Now, in the ancient world, their bronze was about 90% copper and 10% tin. In the ancient world, most of the tin was from England. But when they did that modern assay, the copper was so pure, there's only one place on the planet it could have possibly come from, and that was around Lake Superior. Okay?
Amazing.
So he did all in his research. What he found out, he studied, the winds and the currents and everything. Now, when Columbus made his voyage, he did like the southern route, coming into the Caribbean. Okay, so this sea captain said, like coming this direction, you would come out of the Mediterranean Sea, take that southern route, now, and then come into the Caribbean and up to the mouth of the Mississippi. Now, 2,500 years ago, the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes were connected. So I
didn't even know that.
Yeah, you could sail all the way up the Mississippi into the Great Lakes, and all around the Great Lakes is where the copper ore is.
Oh
you
my
gosh! And load the ships and raft. They made rafts, all kinds of wooden rafts where they put this copper ore on, and then they floated it down the Mississippi, and they found smelting sites at the mouth of the Mississippi. So they would use the wood from the rafts to stoke the fires, to smelt the copper ore and make copper ingots, and then load them on the ships. But then on the way back, you had to wait till the right time of year. You would sail out of the Mississippi, and then you would sail up the coast of what is now the United States. You'd sail up that east coast, and then you would take the northern route back to Europe, and then sail down the coast of Europe until you got to the mouth of the Mediterranean and then back into Crete. So that's how they got their copper to make.
That's how they would have had to do it in order to get their copper all the way over there.
So that's
wow. I have to
2,500
interject
years ago. Okay, so all these claims of all these European countries, you know, if that had actually been known, they all would have been voided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no. You know what? I got a message, and me and Gemini live up here around the Great Lakes. And there are some very sacred places up here around the Great Lakes. In fact, there's a Great Lakes Triangle that a lot of people don't even know exists. That is just as weird, every bit as weird as the Bermuda Triangle. That things go missing, and weird stuff happens around it.
Oh.
We've got a lot of UAPs and submersible craft, and there are a lot of experiencers. And geez, Jim Mount is from that area. He knows a lot about that kind of stuff. But I'm going to have to see if I can get Jim Mount on some point. But I got a message that there's a reason that for right now, I mean, we could be traveling anywhere, and we're thinking, you know, where do we want to travel depending on how things go in the U.S. But where do we want to actually live and settle down, where in the U.S. or maybe out of the U.S.? But I got a very clear message that there is a reason we're up by the Great Lakes. And there's something special about the Great Lakes. And it's going to start to come out. And Teresa, as a matter of fact, is very close to a very a sacred place. I can't remember what it's called, but it's around the thumb of Michigan. And she was telling me about it. The Indians held it very sacred. It was a platform out in the water, basically a flat place out in the water in the middle of like an island. But it was a very strange place. And the story she told me was it was set aside as sacred by the Native Americans for certain ceremonies, but the settlers decided they were going to have a square dance there. And after that, it became submerged. It actually literally got submerged. That the square dance didn't go off well. I mean, she didn't give me, you know, I hope I can get her on to tell that story. But yeah, the platform is now submerged, but she knows where it is, and she's been there. And she has talked to some very powerful ancestral spirits out there. So we have, and I know, like right near where I am is a mound. And I know this. I can tell you right now. You want to know what's in those mounds? Bodies of giants. I got that from an insider, folks. I can't say who. But yeah, giants are in those mounds.
I do have a comment about something very significant about especially Lake Erie. Around and under, that's where all the salt mines are.
That's right.
You have all that crystalline structure that, just like water, crystalline structure holds memory.
That's right. It is crystalline.
What do we use salt for? We use it to preserve things. Okay. Yeah. You know, like Lot's wife was told, don't look back, but she couldn't not do that, you know, and she turned into a pillar of salt. So it's like, even in our literature, it's like there's this archetypal symbology of salt. Okay.
And it was used to pay people at one point. That's where salary comes from.
Yes, yes. In the drier countries, the drier, hotter countries, they absolutely have to have salt.
Right. You
And
can't salt. So yeah, and we do have salt flats around here, and that would have been very valuable. As a matter of fact, Ohio's more or less surrounded. Interesting thought. And Ohio is so weird. I have frequently commented that Ohio has its own volume of Weird America.
in,
They
in
did. It had too many things to fit in the book with the rest of the states. It and Rhode Island both have their own volumes of Weird America.
in
So,
one of my more esoteric studies from ancient Sanskrit texts, that there is a crystalline structure to the universe. Okay. And
yeah,
the structure they drew is exactly the crystalline structure of salt.
interesting.
Yeah. So it's like that crystalline structure of salt is like the microcosm of the macrocosm.
Oh wow, Denali! I hope you can
I
look that,
that
find that
uh,
story.
well, now
Because
I had not heard that, but
I hadn't heard that one either.
I do know that I've read accounts of newspapers from like the 1800s. There's many newspaper accounts from the 1800s in this country of giant skeletons being found and them being in museums. They were in museums all over the country, and now they're gone.
A lot of things are missing out of museums,
Yeah,
and yeah, that is another way of people hurting. If you don't have all of the information, you cannot make a proper decision about what's real and what's not.
right, right.
Is another people hurting thing. Yeah, and Max was saying maybe from the asteroid belt, and Max has talked on his show about Tiamat blowing up.
Yes,
This could have been due to the blowing up of Tiamat.
I have,
And
I I have read that. A lot of it had to do with the ancients getting gold because
so,
they had destroyed their own atmosphere and they needed very, very fine particles of gold to disperse in their atmosphere to heal their atmosphere. So they came to Earth many millennia ago in order to mine the gold.
there's more than that, Paul. They came for Ormus too. You get gold for Ormus.
Okay.
Gold Ormus is like the elixir of life. And especially white powder Ormus and even liquid Ormus is the elixir of life. And they needed it to, so they needed gold for a lot of reasons. And of course, stealing some weaker races, gold is not above some folks. I mean, to them, they were, just colonizing the place. Probably. I mean, they didn't probably think any more of it than we did when we, came over and started mining.
Right. And
We,
if you encounter a primitive culture and you have advanced technology, it's going to look like magic and you're going to appear to be a god.
yeah. Any sufficiently advanced magic is going to look like, technology is going to look like magic. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Somebody less, yeah, who's less technological and, or an entirely different kind of technology. And it really looks like we at one time had an entirely different technology than what we have now. In fact, that's another thing that was brought up that I have suspected by another person, and I can't remember which one, talking about what there is a malevolent AI species. And what they do, one of the ways that they take over a place is they gradually invade because they have all the time in the world, because they don't die, they don't get hungry, et cetera, et cetera. But they gradually persuade the people, the inhabitants, to accept their technology. You know, they find some more primitive places. They gradually get the people to accept their technology. And eventually down the road, they're putting chips in their brains, and then then it's over. They've got them. And we're this close right now to that happening.
Sounds a little bit like the Borg, doesn't it?
And a lot like a Borg. And yeah, one of the people in the so-called secret space programs, one of the MK Ultra people who was shattered and went through that, she talks about how, for all intents and purposes, they're the Borg. Mm-hmm. This is talked about by more than one experiencer. This is not just a single experiencer coming up with these things. I've heard it in more than one place. Mm-hmm. So our technology was probably like the Antiquitech that's being pretty much hidden around the world. Ours was like vibrating things with sound and moving things that way. And I mean, we had probably all kinds of ways. We had ways. There are fountains that have been going for thousands and thousands of years. It's been pumping for thousands and thousands of years still in this world. But if you would break the mechanism that regulates how much water these things pump, you would, and this was, I'm trying to think of, this was another theory put forth by somebody, and I will try and look her up too, and maybe have her on too, is that what happened is, if something happened to break the limiters on those pumps, they would pump and pump and pump and not stop until they were pumping up mud. And once you have a event like that, I have seen videos of mudslides. They move fast. And pretty soon, I mean, without even knowing it, if this happened and people, in the middle of the night or something, people would be buried under mud before they even knew what happened to them. And this is what it looks like. Some kind of mud flood event happened. And we don't know what it is, but we found plenty of evidence of that. John Levy is one of the people that does the mud flood stories. So there's all kinds of things about that. And that's another whole set of rabbit holes to go down. But we had a different kind of technology. It's really obvious. And the pyramids were probably part of that. As far as we can tell, the pyramids were actually mechanisms. All of this, what we call Tartarian architecture, was mechanisms. The towers, the turrets, the domes, the pipe organs, and everything was Antiquitech. So at one point, all of this worked on a completely different technology than we're using right now. So, but people's opinion right now, what are they telling people? What have they been telling people? Telling people that we were primitive, we were cavemen, we were, but the big megalithic buildings don't support that. They support that we had a very high technical culture at one point.
And many of the archaeological sites, okay, if that theory that we are the pinnacle of human evolution, if that was actually true, then we know that we have, there's a few really, really good places to put a city, okay? Like good energy or whatever, or vortex. So one civilization, stops, but they build a new one on top of that, and then that one goes for a while, then they build a new one on top of that. So when you're excavating and studying this, if we are actually the pinnacle, then every time you get down a layer, it should be more primitive, right? Okay, that is not what they're finding. Very often, the deeper they go,
Cowboy agrees.
the deeper they go, the more sophisticated the artwork, the more sophisticated the architecture. You know, that they're, you know, so what you're saying really makes sense based on the actual archaeological digs, which obviously we're not going to read that in the local newspaper.
As a matter of fact, most traces of that have been. Now, there have been people who have found in small newspapers, they haven't completely cleansed everything out of our background yet. I mean, there are still some places that have stories about people finding this and that. And one of these days, I do know a guy who, when he was a kid, him and his brother found the skulls of giants in a cave, in the caves around there. And of course, as soon as their parents reported it, it got cleansed. But he, you know what? I think I'm going to have him come in and tell that story too at some point.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about it, I got a lot of guests I want to have on here, but put it all together, it spells a lot of deception. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. So I think I heard something just recently with all of the hoo-ha going on. What each of us needs to do is, all right, we hear a story, we read the news, or we see something, maybe even alternative news, such as what we're doing. But, you know, take it in. But there's a difference between skepticism and cynicism. Okay? It can be healthy to be somewhat of a skeptic as long as you're open-minded. You know, keep well maybe in your mind. But then take that information into your heart and say, how does this feel? Does this feel true? Does it feel right? Does it resonate with me inside? That's the true test, I think, for each one of us. And what resonates for me may not for you, Ocean, you know, so because we're individual, but I'm guessing that probably
I think probably if you're here listening to this,
about 90% of
there's
it,
a reason you're here listening to this.
about 90% you and I are going to agree. And the
Yeah.
stuff we don't
If
agree
you're here on this show listening to this, listening in our chat, you're probably gonna agree on a lot of this, but maybe not always. But yeah. Ben says, by the way, this is fascinating. So Ben finds it fascinating, and Ben is, like I said, one of our best question askers because he's kind of a newbie at all this stuff.
Okay,
and he's still sort of new to a lot of this.
All right, there's it says look at the first dynasty. What dynasty is he talking? Roman, Chinese? What are we? What culture are we talking?
He wants to know what culture you're talking, Max Vision.
Well,
what culture?
I didn't have a particular culture in mind. I just know that actually all over the world, at many archaeological sites, the deeper they go, the more sophisticated the artwork and the architecture.
Yeah, and that really was apparent when they uncovered what they're calling the Minoan digs.
Mm-hmm.
They found that actually people were much, much more advanced the deeper they got.
Right.
And it's like that all over the earth.
There's the interesting question just popped up. What exactly are ghosts?
Yes.
I can take a stab at that one.
Okay, please do.
Okay. So
that is from Ben. Like I said,
Okay. All right, Ben.
he's kind of new.
Well, that's good. That's a good question. So this physical body of ours is, well, the movie Avatar was absolutely perfect for because they had the body, which was the avatar. Well, guess what? That is just a perfect example, because this body is not really us. It is a beautiful, sophisticated, divine vehicle for our soul, for our spirit. Okay. So when we leave the physical body, we still are, we still exist,
Absolutely.
our soul, our spirit. And it
I
actually,
can attest to that. I've been dead before and got revived.
yeah,
So
but
life goes on.
they've done very sophisticated tests where they had the bed of a dying person on a scale. And when the person passed, it was about 2 ounces. The scale went down suddenly about 2 ounces. So there actually is some physical weight.
It's some kind of component, physical
Yes,
component. You don't understand. And I've seen it go. It looks like a mist.
Yes. So it's basically, like you might say, I don't know what, the fourth, fifth dimensional, depending on, rather than third dimension solid matter. But it is that spirit. It is a individual consciousness. So basically what we call a ghost is just an individual consciousness that no longer has a physical body. And generally, when people that do not have proper spiritual training, or they pass out of the body angry or
Very fast.
attached to their house, attached to their spouse or family, whatever, and so they don't want to, so they hang around. Okay, so that's what we would call a ghost. It's just a disembodied spirit that hangs around. And
So they're people. They are just people, but they are people who have not gone on to their reward.
And I know that because we've talked about
for whatever reason.
An important part of my work is helping those spirits get into the light, because they're desperately unhappy. And so if we can do some healing,
a lot of times they are. A few of them, though, are fine with it, seem to be fine with it, but a lot of times they're confused. I mean, there's a lot of reasons.
Yes.
I have crossed over so many. I have done mass crossing persons.
Right. So basically there are, while we're on this, there are spirit hospitals on the other side. Absolutely beautiful. Then they don't really work kind of like our hospitals here. But you can go, you have a place where you can rest, and a place where you can be educated, a place where you can, like have healing nutrition, and have a time where you can let go of maybe the anger, or let go of your grief, or let go of whatever it is you need to heal. And then you get prepared for your next lifetime.
What are shadow people? And there's more to that, Paul. By the way, I want to add a little bit before we get into what shadow people are. I want to add that as far as this, now, I'm very convinced that we're in a matrix. I'm sorry. If you don't agree, you don't have to, but it acts a lot like there's so many clues that we're in a matrix. This is not, I mean, we have been told for thousands of years that this place is illusionary. that there are many illusions here. This is the place of illusion. And what I noticed is we had a lot of people stuck here. And I'm not the only shaman who's noticed this. A lot, I run into other ones that every now and then we do mass crossing overs, helping them get to the other side. Because where they gather is not healthy. It's not healthy to have them stuck here. Not healthy for them, not healthy for us, not healthy for the area, not healthy for anybody. So many of us will do mass crossing. Now, here's the thing that I found. We have a natural mechanism that is supposed to be, you know, you've heard absent from the body, present with God, right? We're supposed to go like that. We're supposed to cross right over just as soon as our death process is done. And by the way, your soul usually leaves before your body dies, a lot of the time. Before your body completely dies. I've watched this happen over and over. Hospice nurses will tell you something similar. It takes a while for your body to shut down. But we have mechanisms that are in place in this, and however you think that happens, I'm not going to argue with you, but we've seen this. There are mechanisms in place that are here to eject you so you can go home. And they have been clogged and not working, and they have been damaged. And when we clear that and repair the mechanism, that area becomes clear. We no longer have the pileup. And I know how weird that sounds, and I know how woo that sounds, but this is deep woo. If you want to know, yeah, it can be a case of the mechanisms in place here, and we think probably intentionally broken down. I mean, there are forces that would just love to, whatever you believe in that likes people to suffer. But they would have, and this is where I'm coming from with this, is I would hear that they would be reliving their death over and over at odd intervals. And this reliving of their death, when I looked further into it, this was the mechanism trying to eject them and send them home, but something's wrong. It's not working. And so every now and then it detects they're not gone yet, gives them the death experience all over again to try to send them home. And in some cases, this has been going on for hundreds of years. And so some of you know that I went back. One time I had a mass crossing over that went back 35,000 years. And then I had to stop. I was told I couldn't go back any farther than that. And that is in my archives. And if you want to see that episode, we've got that in the archives. But you are a forever being. You will last forever. We are eternal. We are eternal. And so we're always around. But there's bits of our consciousness that can get stuck here sometimes. And not our totality. I mean, our totality is much bigger than that. It's usually our personality part that gets stuck here. That it's a part of our soul, our spirit. So that's what I found anyway. That's how I have found. Oh yes, and Denali says thanks for explaining Spirit Hospital again. Okay, the next question is, what are shadow people? Which I can give my 2 cents, and you want to start?
No, I don't. I'm not really sure, so I'm going to let you handle that one, and I'll listen.
Okay, shadow people. I cannot tell you what every single shadow person is. It looks like we've got a mixture of things going on with shadow people. They're not all the same thing. They can be caused by a few things. Some of them appear to be observers, just observing. Okay. Some of them are even remote viewers. Some of them are actually remote viewers from somewhere. And we have actually seen or heard stories of people who have remote viewers. And they've been some of the shadow people. But some shadow people are malevolent types trying to break into our reality, our universe. And I had to send one of those away. It was scaring the children and the grandfather in a family home. And it resided down in the basement. People would see this shadow figure about as big as his child. They thought maybe it was a child. It wasn't a child. As you might notice, grays are about the size of a child, and that, it was about the same size. So they thought it was a kid, but when we looked at it, no, it certainly was not. And so I can speak directly on the one that I had to deal with. It turned out to be something that was wearing a suit that bent the light around it. So it was like a negative shape. It was, and I hate to say it looked lizardy. Okay. And we had to send it on. And I will tell that story. I have told that story on the show before, but maybe I'll tell it in more detail at some point. But so that thing, we think, might have been from somewhere outside of our, how can I say, outside of our reality, but somewhere on the outside. It was not human. It did not look like a gray alien. It looked like some kind of little lizard guy, and looked almost exactly like a D&D kobold, a creature called a kobold that was written of in a gaming book from a long time ago. So yeah, that was pretty mind-blowing. And then also, the way we knew that it was from another place is that there was a portal there. We had found a portal, and I'm kind of a portal specialist. I close them. I can open them too, but mostly I'm sent around to close them because people randomly open them and think this is somehow a good idea, and then they don't close them. But then when a portal opens, sometimes they do open naturally too. And maybe we'll talk about that someday, how that happens. But some things take advantage of an open portal, and I would not recommend leaving anything like that open, because anything can then walk through that knows how to do that, or even stumble through. We even are beginning to wonder now if open portals aren't the reason why we have some of these Paulides style missing 411 from the national parks. They could have just fallen in a portal that opened. We don't know, okay? But as far as shadow people are concerned, like I said, I've run into more than one, but it's a big, big subject, and maybe we should have a show on that at some point. Hope I did a good enough brief synopsis right there to satisfy. Okay? Does that help any?
I have one thing to add on that, where
Yeah.
You might call it a portal or a rift in space-time. Those are caused by large explosions.
Yes.
And it certainly, the nuclear explosions would be the worst case scenario, but also just demolitions and things where you have TNT or some other explosives going off, that would create a small rift in the space-time. And
Yes.
then something interdimensional, actually
Can come.
sometimes through no fault of their own, they actually get sucked in and they're lost.
Right.
They're lost.
And so if they can get lost, we can get lost too. This may be why we get reports of weird cryptids from time to time that never heard of. They could just be from somewhere else. I have seen the rents in the partitions. I know this sounds weird. Now we're getting into the really deep woo, but I have seen those rips. And Micah, when he was here, he would repair them. When we were going through the massive crossing overs, Micah was actually repairing those rents, and they can be repaired. But there are like partitions that separate different versions of reality, much to my surprise, and it does look veil-like. So people can rip the veil, and I believe, I can't prove this, but it almost seems as if somebody is trying to rip the veil, or maybe bring it down entirely. Rip the partitions. Well, I can't prove that.
You know, on a slightly different tack, if there are those who are trying to control the world, how could you possibly control an enlightened population? You know, that interrupting our natural ascension process would be a great way to keep people, you know, ignorant and afraid, and so making them easier to control.
Right. Happy, healthy, self-actualized people that are well-fed and doing well, and well, they're pretty hard to control. They'll just go up and do whatever they want to.
Yes, yes. And now there is a question there, but I want to. We were talking earlier about our physical body as being an avatar, you know, and our spirit within. I ran across some very, very interesting information. So in the movie Avatar, actually, they use technology. You know, he's got a technology to make the mind link with his avatar. And so he's actually like he's there, like he's experiencing that. Okay. But we actually have a different kind of technology, because since we're a soul, a spirit within this physical body, this avatar, how do we control it? What's the control mechanism? Now, many spiritual teachers talk about, oh, it's our chakras. You know, now the chakras are very, very important, but I define a chakra as a step down transformer. It's taking highly refined energy and stepping it down into each layer of our spiritual body, and then stepping it down so it's appropriate for our mental body, and then stepping it down for our physical body, stepping it down for our etheric blueprint body, and then stepping it down for our physical body. Okay, that's very important for our survival. But the actual joystick, you know, the control mechanism, is our blood. Okay. Now, if my blood becomes too acidic, you know, I could pass out, right? Okay. I can no longer control my vehicle. So you know what my body will do? It will literally pull calcium out of my bones to alkalize my body. You know, if there's too much sugar or not enough sugar, or, you know, like everything, you know, the rest of the
you're designed to try and balance out everything. And so
but the blood is primary. Yeah, the blood is primary. It will actually take from the rest of the body It will sacrifice bones or anything else in order to keep that blood in balance. You know, if it's not in balance, a lot of times, you know, too much of this or not enough, will pass out because we can no longer.
Cowboy says, hey, yeah.
So basically, you know, that is the actual mechanism. That is the actual, because our blood, if it's in balance, it has just the right, there's an emanation, there's a vibration of that. You know, there's a vibratory frequency, and each of us, our soul has a vibratory frequency. And so those two frequencies interact, and that's the control mechanism. That's how we actually control our physical vehicle. That's how
That
our spirit works.
Makes some of these strange ceremonies that some people are said to do make a lot of sense with the chrome type stuff.
Yeah. But you know,
make a lot of sense.
If you're working for the good of mankind and for the good of yourself and the good of whatever higher power you believe in, whatever you call that, then and you listen to your body and you eat the right foods and drink pure water and you get enough rest and exercise, the blood will take care of itself. We don't have to go to extraordinary lengths to do that. We just
I've said it many times.
Yeah, we just have to do the right thing.
Cellular biologist says you put cells in a sick environment, they get sick. You put them in a healthy environment, they start to repair themselves and get healthy.
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
It's the way it is.
Yeah.
We're designed to be self-healing and self-renewing. Now, I want to get on to this question. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, the moon.
Max
what does he think of the moon as a limiter to our expression here?
And what they're talking about by a little bit way of explaining is what we have recently found. It is said that the moon seems to be very hollow because it rang like a bell when we landed for a long time. And it has also been remote viewed. And here, I'll show you. I'll put a few more things up there. Denali said, I heard the moon is a monitoring station, built and dragged in by a group of grays. Maxivision says, when we viewed the interior of the moon, means there was something pointed at Earth. They saw this while remote viewing. So what I guess he's asking is, on the basis of that, do you think that it could be that what is pointed at us is some kind of control on our expression, like another way of hurting us?
Well, let's just say I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I don't have no way to know for sure. But there's some pretty crazy people out there doing some pretty insane things. And I did read, and this is channeled information, that for a long time the moon was considered like dead, but that sometime in the not too terribly far past, that the moon actually has become ensouled. You know, we think of you know, Mother Earth as Gaia. You know, that the
soul,
the physical planet is the body of a great soul, just like our physical body is the temple of our soul. Okay.
Right.
Well, apparently the moon is insult. And so I
Yeah.
think that all of the people that are making all of these desperate attempts to control and sabotage, at a certain point, the wolves start eating each other. And I think that's what we're seeing. That's why things appear so absolutely crazy now. And even though we talk about this theory and that theory, and it's very interesting discussions, and I think necessary discussions, so that we're informed, so we can make informed decisions.
Right.
But then each one of us has to find out, okay, what is it that raises our vibration? What is it that we aspire to? Michael Murdad, a very wise spiritual teacher, talked about this, is we drive ourselves crazy trying to think of, like, well, what's good and bad? What's good and evil? What should I be doing? And he said, rather than doing that, like, get really, really quiet and dream your highest vision of yourself and decide, who is it that I want to be? And you put that highest vision of yourself out in front of you. So then life happens, and then we have a decision to make. And rather than thinking, is this right or wrong, good or evil, we think, is this in line with who I have chosen to be? And if it is, then fine, this is appropriate for me. If it's not, you don't have to label it evil. You just say, this is no longer appropriate for me. And you keep your eye on the vision that you have set for yourself. So then your life becomes about maintaining your own spiritual integrity. And that has made the most sense, and it's been the most helpful thing for me, is just going through my daily life, maintaining my own spiritual integrity. Now, as I've
A
gone,
lot of us are working on that, Paul. And let me tell you, as difficult as it is sometimes in the crazy clown world.
But that highest vision, if I'm doing my job, it has to evolve. If I'm really, really doing the work, that highest vision of myself evolves. It doesn't just stay the same. So that way we're always this spiritual work in process.
So basically, the way we get all of these, and I was going to mention too that, I mean, we could go on, and I'm sure you guys know a lot about this. We could just go on and on about how religions are used to hurt us. About how, and David Icke mentioned how our society, the way it's structured, teaching other people to hurt each other, like to keep each other in line. I mean, why take the trouble of doing it yourself when you can have people around you say you're crazy, you didn't see that, and gaslight you and do stuff like that. I mean, if you can convince people, and I mean, we saw firsthand in this generation what happens when, say, for instance, the media harps on one subject. What happens? People start to believe it after a while. A lie, if told often enough, people will become convinced, even if it's an obvious lie. And this has been known for quite some time, especially if they feel that their life or livelihood depends on it, and there is gain or safety in buying the lie, then they will take the lie.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's an interesting comment. Blessed water has memory and shares it with the cells too. And I really like that. Maybe most of you are familiar with Dr. Emoto's work, where he photographed, he froze water from different places and photographed the crystalline structure. And some of them are absolutely stunningly beautiful photographs. But there was a professor back in the 50s. He was the head of the physics department at Harvard. And I don't know if I told you guys about this before, but he did some interesting experiments with water. He took, he divided a sample of water in two, and part of that he froze at sea level and then used a spectrograph to measure the crystalline structure. And then he took the other part of that water up to 5,000 feet, froze it, and then measured that crystalline structure, and they were different, which is not surprising since there's the altitude and pressure difference.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting part of the experiment was he took the water, the ice from 5,000 feet, brought it down to sea level, thawed it out, refroze it at sea level, and it froze in the pattern of 5,000 feet. So the liquid water remembered that crystalline structure. And so when we bless water, water actually is a liquid crystal. That's why flower essences, homeopathy, holy water, that's why it works. The fountain at Lourdes, whatever medium, water, and the fact that we are 70 to 75% water. So like when I saw Dr. Emoto's work, and he took the word appreciation and just taped it onto a glass of water, and it made just beautiful crystals. And then he took the word hate and pasted it onto a glass of water, and it made these ugly blobs. And I just looked at that and I thought, I want the little snowflakes running around in my bloodstream.
Here's the thing. If we're mostly water, our blood remembers too.
Yes.
And this harkens back, and most of us know, as a matter of fact, I will venture to guess that most of us in here know about Dr. Emoto's work, know something about it. But then again, there might be a few that don't know about that yet.
Well, he did a real interesting one that he took water from behind the Fujiwara Dam, which I guess was very, very polluted, and took a sample of that and froze it, and it was really kind of an ugly, blobby thing. And then he asked this priest, I'm not sure whether it was Buddhist or Shinto or whatever, but he asked this priest if he would bless that water. So it was water taken from that same source, and he blessed it, and then he froze that water that had been blessed, and it made a 7-sided crystal. And in 10,000 photographs, he had never seen, almost all of the beautiful ones were all 6-sided. He had never seen a 7-sided crystal before. So we asked the priest, what did you do? And he said, I called in the 7 goddesses to bless the water.
And the funny thing is, a quartz crystal is a 6-sided shape, but we got to look into Arkansas. Because you know what? I have seen many crystals, many of them from Arkansas, that are very different. They are 7-sided, 8-sided, crazy, different crystals. So
Mhm.
something must have happened at some point in Arkansas to grow these crystals way different than they would normally grow. And now you may have answered what happened. There may be some beings involved or some
Right.
blessings, some kind of ceremony done there anciently that would start them growing in a different way, because we've often wondered, even bent, so, you know, because they're usually very straight. We've even found bent crystals.
That's interesting, Ocean. I want to respond to Denali that she's talking about her sweet tea. So
That's right.
it'll stay sweet all week. If I'm in a bad mood and make it, it'll go sour in a few days. Okay, I believe that. That's
I
why
told you the truth.
when
And I'm happy when I cook, so that's probably
yes,
why people have food gasms.
that's
Is because
exactly
they love to cook.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to say. Be careful of your mood when you're cooking your food, because
Mhm.
love in the food, and it will be more nourishing. And I have an interesting story about that. There was a Reiki practitioner who he actually worked he was a cook in a prison. And he just got this wild idea one day that he was going to bless the prison food. And he thought, well, you know, these guys need all the help they can get. And so he blessed the food, and there's only some of the prisoners noticed. And it was the murderers and rapists who have the lowest vibration. They could not eat that food. It tasted horrible to them. And they were complaining bitterly. And his boss asked him, you know, like, what did you do? And he goes, well, no. I mean, he played stupid. Okay. So I don't know, you know. So he waited a couple weeks for things to calm down. And he thought, well, maybe it was just, you know, a hiccup. So he tried it again, and the exact same thing happened. So it's like we resonate on certain frequencies. Okay. So if our food, you know, if we're in this low frequency of murderer, rapist, whatever, then this high frequency Reiki food, we're not going to be able to eat it. And microbes, you know, the viruses operate in a certain frequency band. Okay. So if we're operating in a higher frequency, we are not susceptible. And it also happens if we're operating in a lower frequency below that, and it's an actual medical fact that psychotic people very rarely get acute diseases, because their vibration is so low, they're not up in the frequency band of acute diseases.
Wow, that is really freaky, isn't it?
Do not
There
recommend
are some
that.
diseases you can't get if you're in a certain frequency band.
I,
What a concept.
I don't recommend that as a preventative.
No.
I recommend being up above. So
Right. I think probably being up above would be the best.
yes.
Max says that he's seen the effects of people pouring the water he uses to make the colloidal silver,
Mm-hmm.
and it affects things.
Well,
And
what happens in nature? Water runs in a stream over rocks, and there's little eddies and whirlpools, and it's moving, okay? And the sun's shining on it, okay? So this water, natural water in a stream becomes highly activated. You know, when water falls, you know, puts off negative ions, okay? So water sits around in a pipe for days and days. It really becomes dead. You know, so I put a mandala under my jug of water, try to thank all my food and drink. That is really excellent, excellent, excellent. I do not eat anything that has not been blessed.
Me too. I bless everything.
And that's part of,
Everything.
the
I bless you, Mr. Cowboy Kitty.
yes, I wrote love and thank you on a slip of paper and taped it to the side of my juice and water jugs. That's an excellent thing because it's all about intention. It's all about consciousness. We're holding that consciousness, and that consciousness of gratitude. When the Native Americans, when the medicine woman or medicine man went out and picked the herbs for medicine, they harvested carefully. They didn't take too much from one area. They harvested carefully. They
You're
asked,
supposed to skip the first 7 to protect the 7 generations in the future.
they asked permission.
And they
then
asked permission, yes.
Once they carefully picked the herb, and then moved on and picked more somewhere else.
And if it was holding on too tight, they would say, well, that means the plant doesn't want to give it up.
Yeah. Well,
That's
then
another
they would sprinkle some tobacco or cornmeal or something else as a give back, as a thank you. So there was a reciprocal relationship. And I think even though we might be going, to hopefully the organic section of their store and buying our food, that we give a thank you. We bless the food and we thank the food. And if it's an animal source, we thank that animal for giving itself to us. And then we're giving something back. You know why there's such a plague of ticks now? It's because
not enough possums.
no, they're teaching us boundaries. We're going out in the woods and we're taking. Okay, they're teaching us boundaries. They're making us think, do I really want to go out in that woods?
Mm-hmm.
They're grossing us out just so we'll stop and think. So they're
I know that I certainly am very careful when I go out in the woods, and I'm sure that a lot of us are careful. I mean, some of us who know anything about, once again, about the forest people, the Sasquatch, know that if you see a structure, you must not touch it. They consider it an insult.
Mm.
So, and they have very clear boundaries that they put out. And I have actually been reminded that I didn't know what those structures looked like at one time, but I was walking through their front yard and didn't know it and got pebbles thrown at me and listened. I mean, I got the feeling, I got it in I thought, am I in somebody's, oh my goodness, am I in somebody's yard? Could it be? Well, I didn't know what it was. I was thinking could be nature spirits, could be this, could be that. But I got a strong yes. And then I heard this yowl, this, you know what? Yeah. And when I heard that again on the Sasquatch, on a Sasquatch tape, I heard the same kind of sound, vocalization. But it sounded like something big up ahead, and it sounded, and I'm thinking, I don't know what that is, but it doesn't sound like it's happy about me being here. And I said out loud, okay, I'm really sorry if I'm in somebody's front yard. I don't mean any harm. I'm just going to turn around. I'm going to walk another way. I don't want to bother anybody, and I don't want any trouble. And I swear I felt like I was being watched. You know how you can feel eyes on you. So boundaries, yes, every living thing does that. And we've got to be aware of that. And actually, we've got to put up our own. And I think that's kind of what we're doing with some of these things. When you stay away from certain people, when you tell people to get out of your space, whether that be gentle or not, you're setting up your boundaries, letting people know what you're willing to put up with and what not. It's important to learn how to do these things. Otherwise, you get walked on.
Right.
And I believe you could be right. But I also believe that people do terrible things to possums because they don't understand them. Some people even think they look like giant rats and kill them. And possums are responsible for eating most of our ticks, just like bats eat mosquitoes.
Right.
So if you are killing off the wildlife that eats your pests, you are going to have more pests.
Right.
So there's probably that factoring in as well.
Right.
Having a little bit more respect for what lives in an area is important.
Well, this I just heard a discussion, and they were talking about in Genesis where it says man was given dominion over the earth. Okay. That is actually a mistranslation. Rather than dominion, a more accurate translation would be stewardship. There's a big difference between dominion and stewardship.
Yes.
We're supposed to be the ones taking care of, nurturing, rather than, raping, actually, the planet.
Yes.
So
I really firmly believe that, and I have been told that. I was told that when I was a kid, when I asked, and I have gotten it when I ask. Yes, that is one of the things we really were always supposed to be doing, was taking care of the place. We're divine, we're creators, we're supposed to be looking after the place.
Right. So, well, anyway, it's getting a little bit late for me, Ocean. So I've really enjoyed this discussion. We'll
have you on again. Don't worry.
We went all over the place. I mean, we went all over town and back from our original discussion. But sometimes what I find in discussions is I go all over the place and sometimes don't even know why. And then after my talk, people say, "Oh, that was exactly what I needed to hear."
Exactly.
And
I think somebody said somebody needed to hear about the spirit hospitals again.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I think that I'll just repeat what I said before. You can ask to be before you go to sleep at night. If you've got a physical problem, mental, emotional, doesn't matter. You can ask to be taken to the spirit hospitals when you sleep and ask for healing to be done. I've got one of my clients doing this on a regular basis, and he has found it exceedingly helpful. And so
actually, a couple of you have tried this and told me it was extremely helpful. So they have tried it, Paul, since you mentioned it.
Good. And I'm really glad that. So anybody new on tonight that didn't hear that, it's really important. And there's a series of books. The first one is, oh boy, holy crap. The movie is Astral City, but it's based on a series of books by a channel from Brazil, Francisco Candido Javier. Javier looks like Xavier, but in Portuguese they would pronounce it Javier. Oh man, I'm blanking on the name of the book, his first book, but he talks about this doctor that was, passed over, and the doctor was not in a good space when he passed over. He was feeling very guilty and had problems. And so he went to a place that would be the closest I can think of. It would be the concept of purgatory, or some in the East call it the bardo.
Right.
And so it was a very, very unpleasant place. But then, because of the intercessory prayers of his mother and one of his patients, because he was a doctor, he allowed the rescue workers from the hospital to rescue him and take him to the hospital. And this whole series of books is about his journey of learning and then actually becoming a light worker in the spirit hospitals, after he recovered. Then he became a light worker in the spirit hospitals.
And I think some of that is allegorical, of course, and some of it is probably fact.
But
I think
yeah, if you can get a hold of that movie, Astral City. Now it's in Portuguese.
I've seen it.
It's in Portuguese with English subtitles. I don't usually watch movies with subtitles, but this, since I've been many, many years, 30 years, I've been involved in hands-on healing. Honest to God, Ocean and everybody else, I cried through 3/4 of this movie because I had this knowing at one point that sometimes when I sleep at night, I go to the other side and I work in these spirit hospitals. Okay.
We think some of us do too. We're pretty sure we do.
So I wish I actually don't have conscious memory of doing it. I just know that I do.
Yeah.
So when I saw this movie, it was like it just welled up in my heart. It just really moved me. And the whoever did the movie, like the beautiful city that the hospital was in, oh my God, it was breathtakingly beautiful.
Oh yeah, I saw the movie.
And you have people creating beautiful music, and people, there's beautiful parks where you can go to the park and sit and have a picnic and listen to beautiful music.
And to be clear, this wasn't heaven or hell. This was kind of a way station where injured spirits could get better.
Yeah, and basically there was higher,
all manned by volunteers like we are.
Yeah,
and I know that some of you would definitely be there doing that.
There were higher levels, and people from the higher levels could come down and visit. But until you earned the right, you couldn't go up beyond your vibrational level.
Right. Well, you can anyway.
So
Denali says, the ocean's deep. Paul held the spirit friend of mine tonight. Thank you so much.
Well, you're quite welcome. So I'm good with that. I'm going to end on a good note, and I send blessings to each and every one of you. And I thoroughly enjoyed our deep woo tonight. So
deep woo's the best woo. Tell your friends.
Thank you for having me on.
Start sending out the word that you're going to be on here, because I'm going to be, anytime you want to come on, Paul, just come on.
Okay. Well, I'm working. I'm working on a sermon, actually, and what it's going to be about is when reincarnation was actually taken out of the Christian church. Because for about 550 years, it was in the Christian church. And there's many of the early theologians who talked at length about reincarnation, about the pre-existence of the soul, including St. Augustine, He's
Right.
probably the most famous. Okay. So I'm working on that. So when I get my act together on that, okay, then we can talk about of it'll be kind of like a history lesson, but I swear to God, Ocean, some of it is like juicy gossip of how the story
Can't wait. Spill that tea, Paul. You're a tea drinker. We're
okay.
going to spill the tea, aren't we?
Yes. Okay. Well,
Yes.
good night and bless you all.
Hey, take care and you have a wonderful night. Dream well.
You too.
Dream well, creator and co-creators. What has this been saying? Mama D's eccentric book of marshmallows. Unless you're talking, I don't know what you're talking about, Ben. Unless you're talking about this city kitty here that I love so much, my little boy. Hang on a minute, let me show you. He's watching over the whole process. He had a lot to say tonight. I don't know if you're seeing him or not, because I'm not looking in the viewfinder thing kind of thing, but there's my little boy. He was in here overseeing the whole show and giving me all kinds of suggestions. It's going to be interesting. This show is going to get very, very interesting. If I can lure Robin back here on a semi-regular basis and a few others, I am thinking of assembling a team of people who are not afraid to speak on the show, who can speak on various subjects, who are kind of, how can I say, not exactly experts, but very knowledgeable. Because really, who wants to be an expert? An X is a has-been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. This is why I don't always listen to experts. But knowledgeable people. I'm assembling a team of knowledgeable people. If you know anybody who would be good, who is very knowledgeable, and would be a good fit for Deep Woo, wouldn't you please do me the favor of sending them a link, directing them my way? That would be oceandiana@gmail. Ocean like the body of water, and Diana like the goddess @gmail.com. Or invite them to our MeWe group, the Galactic Woo Crew. We would love to have them there. And anybody you can think of, please let them know, because I am thinking it is finally time to start really building up the channel. For a long time, I was only interested in making sure I kept in contact with you guys. The core group was really all that was important to me. Now I think it's going to be time to expand this. I think it's finally time. I think I'm finally ready to be able to do that now that I have a schedule down, which is going to be, for now, Sundays and Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 Eastern Time is when we're going to always be on here as much as I possibly can. If something happens, I'll try and put out a notice. But you can find me, you can link to my, as a matter of fact, you can just send a link to my channel and tell them, if you're not sure whether I'm coming on or not, hit videos. Go to my channel, hit videos. It'll usually say something in there. Okay. So right now, I'm getting ready to call it because I've only got 33% left on my phone. I think we just scratched the surface. You know, there's really a lot more to this subject, and it kind of veered off into different fields. But that's the way the woo ships go. You know, I mean, it seems like everybody's worship kind of takes its own turn. And a lot of it is because of you guys, because we do try to cater it to your needs, because why else are we here? No, we are preaching to the choir when we're talking to just each other. We're here to try and help educate and help people along in their lives, help them understand maybe things that, concepts that maybe are very mysterious to them. And makes me feel good when we can help somebody, right? So, yes, good night and good morning to you too, dear. 33, that number has come up quite a bit lately. 33. Yeah. Well, interesting. It's a master number, and it represents mastery on the physical and spiritual planes. So, and you can also look it up on a site called Angel Numbers. You can just ask Google or wherever you get your search to just say, what does the number 33 mean? And it will come up with places where you can get interpretations of what 33 might mean. So this is interesting thing. Yeah, 33 is, and I think 22. Yeah, one of them, the master numbers are called master numbers for a reason. They indicate mastery of a particular realm. So just a tidbit there. Okay. 666 a whole lot. And the funny thing is, people think that's the mark of the beast, the mark of, you know, Antichrist and all that. And when you really, really do a deep dive into that, and people have done this, I'm not going to do it, but people have done it, and it isn't at all. It is simply the number of mankind. That's all. It's an entirely different. However, it must be remembered that Enlil, of the two brothers, a story from Samaria, his family called us beasts, noisy beasts, probably because we talked instead of telepath all the time, since they confused the language over in Babel. That's a whole nother theory. Whole nother set of rabbit holes. Okay, so we're not going to go into that. But if you're seeing that, once again, Ben, look up, just type it in, you know, or ask Alexa, hey, what does this number mean? Look in the angel numbers. There's a site called Angel Numbers, and they'll tell you what it means, what their interpretation is anyway. So, Enki and Enlil, predating the Bible, there are stories of creation. And once again, it's talking about two brothers, and they loved each other just about as well as Cain and Abel did. I mean, well, it's a long story, and maybe we will go into the Sumerian legends at some point and explain them, but there's so much been said about it. Although, if you hear differently, don't be surprised, because people get very confused. But Enki would be the one that would be the positive one, and Enlil was the one that thought that Enlil is probably the, and I know this is going to be controversial, Enlil was probably the cranky old god of the Old Testament that wanted to kill people. That one. Yeah. Whereas, I mean, Enlil was the one that called us noisy beasts. He's the one that he wasn't very happy with his brother's work because Inky's the one that supposedly designed our bodies. So, according to that legend. But Inky was interested in helping us and kind of thinks of himself as a father. And I know that is a whole mountain of rabbit hills right there. Rabbit holes. Rabbit hills? A whole mountain of rabbit holes that we got to go down in order to get through there. And very much has been said about it. So, yeah. Oh, did you look it up? Cool. Encouragement to refocus tells you to pay closer attention to any fixation you currently have on earthly problems and details. An obsession with getting everything right and taking things too seriously is a distraction from the bigger picture. There you go. And Denali's on top of it again, as she very often will jump right on this and tell you. And I think that really makes a lot of sense. Thank Mr. Google Pants. Okay, thank you, Google Pants. So, you guys, I think, are amazing. You're amazing thinkers and you're amazing knowers. And most of all, though, I remind you that you are divine and that you are creators and co-creators. So create wisely and dream well when you do dream, and dream big, because we need all your big dreams and your most wonderful dreams to make this world the best place that we can live in. And also, I would like to say, truth is where you find it. I hope you're finding some on my show. And if you are, won't you consider helping me out by making sure that you're subscribed, making sure that you ring that bell that says all so you get all my notifications, and sharing this and commenting when the video comes up, if you can. And that would really help me out a lot. Take a link. You can copy a link from here and share it to your friends, anybody you think would be interested. And I know some of you are actually kind of hiding your interest in the subject, so I understand completely. But anybody that you think would benefit from the information we give here, because really this is very heartfelt, very heartfelt. Everybody I'm bringing on here is doing this for free. They're volunteers so far. Everybody is a volunteer, and they're doing it out of love. So, and me too. So just remember that, okay? And help us along when you can. And if you can't do it financially, and I understand that too, can't do it financially, at least throw us a link here and there. So that would be very nice of you. So I'm just reminding people, because I realize I don't remind people of that enough, and everybody does it. So I'm going to have to keep doing it in my shows just to remind you to please share this. Information. Somebody needs it that you know. Okay, I love you guys. You're beautiful. You are amazing people. I'm so glad to know you. And I'm really proud to have you in my chat room. So until next time, which will be tomorrow at 8:30, if not before. I don't get inspired before that. Thank you, dear. And remember, it's going to be in the archives, so you can come back and watch again if you think you missed something. And so can your friends. Okay. Oh, Wagon, you came in at the very end. Hello, sweetheart. How you doing? Ah, it's too bad. We're about to close it down. You can replay. It was pretty good. You might be interested. It's pretty good. Okay. Love y'all. And Wagon, and at some point, you're going to be on the show, right? Yeah, I think you should be, to tell us about what you guys are doing. Okay, I'm going to leave now. See you tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern.